Have you ever felt like there's something in the Bible that no one has ever really told you? Something hidden right before our eyes, and that if revealed, could completely change the way we see the world around us? For centuries, theologians, kings, emperors, and even religious institutions have passed through Daniel 8 without realizing the real weight of this biblical prophecy. Or worse, they noticed but decided to keep silent. After all, not everyone is prepared to find out that the end time is not coming. He has already begun. What if I told you that there is a prophetic timeline, told over thousands of years, timed with real events in history, that points to our exact current moment? No, that's not a conspiracy theory. It is the pure Bible, solid eschatology. It is biblical revelation with detailed names, dates, empires, and judgments, all there in Daniel 8. But few have the courage to face what this really means. If you've ever been confused by so much spiritual misinformation, if you're tired of superficial faith, or if you feel like God is trying to show you something greater, then you're in the right place. Because today, you will find out what no one has had the courage to tell you so far. And get ready. Once you see this truth, there is no turning back. Are you ready for it? Imagine yourself in one of the darkest moments in biblical history. Daniel, a young Hebrew exile, is in the midst of Babylon, an oppressive empire ruled by Belshazzar, the last king of Babylon. It is in this atmosphere, charged with idolatry and corruption, that a divine vision breaks the silence of the night. Daniel 8 records this intense episode where the prophet receives a biblical prophecy so complex and detailed that to this day scholars pore over its implications. He didn't just have an ordinary biblical revelation, but a structured glimpse of the end times. And it all starts with what seemed to be just two animals. Simple, not by a long shot. In Daniel's vision, a ram with two horns appears, one taller than the other, and soon after, a swift goat with a remarkable horn between its eyes. The scene is almost surreal, intense, symbolic, loaded with eschatology. These two animals are not mere creatures. They are the heart of the prophetic message of Daniel 8. The ram symbolizes the Medo-Persian Empire with its two prominent kings. The goat, on the other hand, represents the powerful Greek Empire under Alexander the Great. The visual impact of this vision was not random. God was painting, in prophetic language, the timeline of the final events of human history. And the most incredible, all this centuries before it happened. If there is something that differentiates Bible prophecy from any other form of prediction, it is its millimeter accuracy. Daniel didn't just dream of empires. He saw in astonishing detail who the kings would be, the sequence of domination, the speed of conquest. Alexander the Great appears as the goat's remarkable horn, a direct reference and impossible to ignore. The fact that the Bible names future empires so far in advance should not make us question, but rather tremble. Who else but the Creator could do that? The Bible and today intersect here in a sweeping way. There is something deeply spiritual in Daniel 8 that goes beyond prophetic geopolitics. This vision, although historical and apocalyptic, invites us to surrender. While empires rise and fall, God's people remain under the watchful eye of the Lord. This is not just eschatology, it is a love letter to resilient faith. Daniel's prophetic message invites us to recognize that behind every fall and ascension is an eternal purpose. The ram and the goat may look like figures from a battlefield, but in fact, they are reminders of God's sovereign control over history. Think with me, what if these visions are not just accounts of past events? What if Daniel 8 is, in fact, drawing a direct line back to our day? Many believe that this vision encompasses much more than the end of two empires. It opens a portal for us to understand the final events. And in the middle of it all, there's a character who hasn't even appeared yet. But that will change the whole narrative. The little horn. Yes, he's about to enter the picture. And his presence will completely change everything we understand about power, persecution, and faith. The ram Daniel sees is not just a two-horned animal. It is a symbolic portrait of the Medo-Persian Empire. One of the horns grows after the other, reflecting with historical accuracy the Persian dominance arising after Media. The kings of Media and Persia took turns in power, but it was Persia, under Cyrus, that raised the empire to its peak. Bible prophecy gets even the chronological order of the rise of the powers right, with astonishing accuracy. This level of detail is the kind of thing you simply don't expect from a text that's more than 2 millennia old. Still, there it was. Daniel, centuries before, describing the future with surgeon's precision. And then comes the goat, fast, impetuous, almost out of control, crossing the world without touching the ground. This animal represents the Greek Empire, and its remarkable horn, a figure impossible to ignore, is Alexander the Great, the young conqueror who at the age of 30 had already dominated the known world. Within a few years, Alexander accomplished exactly what the vision describes, a lightning advance, knocking down the Medo-Persian as if it were nothing. There is no exaggeration in the biblical narrative. It is once again at the center of historical reality. The vision of Daniel 8 delivers an eschatology that mixes time, kingdoms, and purpose in a supernatural way. But the goat does not remain whole. The remarkable horn is broken, and in its place, 4 new horns appear. This part of the prophecy is fulfilled when Alexander dies young, and his empire is divided among 4 generals: Cassander, Lysimachus, Ptolemy, and Seleucus. The map of the world changes once again, but the prophetic message remains. What God has said happens. Every detail of Bible prophecy reinforces the unchanging character of the divine plan. The cycle of rise and fall is not random. It is a reminder that, in the end, no human empire is beyond the reach of divine judgment. Not yesterday, not today, not in the time of the end. This is where something profound emerges, the divine pattern behind the story. Kingdoms fall, human glories fade, but the word remains. This whole narrative, which may seem pure geopolitical, is actually an expression of divine sovereignty. When we look at the Medo-Persian Empire and the Greek Empire in light of Daniel's vision, we understand that the Bible and the present day are not disconnected. God does not write stories to entertain. He reveals truths to transform. The eschatology contained in Daniel 8 is a living lesson in what really matters, not the kingdoms of the earth, but the eternal kingdom. If there is something that this passage of vision teaches us, it is that everything that is great, sooner or later, falls, and that every human structure, no matter how bright, powerful, or feared, is subject to God's time and will. The contrast between the speed of the goat and the illusory stability of empires reminds us that what is fast is also volatile, but what is eternal remains. And it is exactly at this point in the narrative that the scenario changes. Something new, unsettling, and spiritually alarming comes into play, the little horn, and believe me, you'll want to know what it stands for. So far, Daniel has seen the rise and fall of the greatest empires of the ancient world, but nothing prepared him for what was to come next. A new character enters the scene, a small horn who starts out modest, but grows in power, boldness, and arrogance. The Bible leaves no doubt. He exalts himself even to the prince of the host. This is not just any figure. It is a prophetic representation of something that goes beyond the limits of politics and enters directly into the spiritual. Many scholars associate this little horn with Rome in its pagan and papal phases. Bible prophecy once again goes beyond what the natural eye can grasp. That little horn doesn't just grow, it challenges. It throws the truth to the ground. He persecutes the saints. Profane that which is sacred. The vision of Daniel 8 clearly shows that it removes continuous sacrifice and directly interferes with true worship. The attack is not only physical, it is theological. It is against the heart of faith, against the plan of redemption, against Christ himself, the prince mentioned in the prophecy. We are faced with a power that tries to replace heaven with an earthly throne, a power that represents more than a political threat. It represents the spirit of the Antichrist at work in history. The most shocking, this Bible prophecy perfectly describes what has happened over the centuries. During the transition from pagan Rome to papal Rome, the persecution of God's people intensified. Truth has been replaced by human traditions. The Bible has been suppressed and eschatology has been distorted. The little horn grew, yes, but at the expense of true faith. The time of the end does not begin with global catastrophes. It begins with the slow and strategic substitution of truth for deception. This is where eschatology becomes personal, and biblical revelation becomes an urgent warning. And now I invite you to a spiritual pause. It's not just a story about kingdoms and symbols. It's about you, because the same spirit that worked in the little horn still tries to lead us away from the truth today. He seduces with religion without holiness, with forms without essence, with tradition without transformation. This part of Daniel's vision is not an invitation to look back and judge. It is a mirror for the present. How many times have we also exchanged true worship for comfort? How often do we let spiritual confusion reign in our daily choices? Prophecy is a wake-up call, but before you think all is lost, know, God is still in control. The prophecy of Daniel 8 does not end with the triumph of the little horn. The text says that it will be broken without human effort. This means that the end of evil will come, but not at the hands of men. It will not be a political movement, nor a social revolt. It will be divine intervention. And more, the judgment is coming. He is the next great milestone in Daniel's narrative. What comes next, my friend, changes everything, because it's not just about what evil has caused. It's about what God will do to restore eternal justice. And then, a question breaks the silence of the vision. How long will the vision last? The answer is clear and intriguing. Up to 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary will be cleansed. Here comes one of the longest and most mysterious prophetic periods in the Bible. Those 2,300 evenings and mornings, according to the day-year principle used consistently in the scriptures, represent 2,300 years. This is not just a symbolic count, it is a divine chronometer, a stopwatch that begins to count from a specific point in history, guiding us towards the time of the end and the investigative judgment. This starting point is essential to understand everything. The prophecy connects directly to the decree to restore Jerusalem, issued in 457 BC in the time of Ezra. From this milestone, we count 2,300 years, arriving at the year 1844. And what happens in 1844? What the prophecy indicates is something that goes unnoticed by many, the beginning of the investigative judgment. Yes, according to biblical eschatology, since 1844, heaven has entered a decisive phase, a kind of pre-Advent judgment, where the character of the faithful is analyzed before the return of Christ. Few teachings are so ignored and so urgent. The cleansing of the sanctuary has nothing to do with an earthly temple, but with the heavenly sanctuary, where Christ ministers as our high priest. Daniel 8 shows us that this purification is linked to the restoration of truth, worship, and divine justice. The Antichrist, represented by the little horn, tried to erase the plan of redemption and distort Christ's role. But the investigative trial, which began after the 2,300 afternoons and mornings, is beginning to reverse this situation. It is God's answer to the question, how long? How long will the truth be thrown to the ground? How long will the saints be oppressed? And here comes a moment of deep spiritual connection, because if we are living in this time, and we are, then everything changes. It means that we are within God's prophetic clock, that every choice, every action, every belief we embrace matter. The time of the end is not a distant future. He started. We are inside it. And the investigative judgment is not a random cosmic spectacle. It is the greatest act of mercy before Christ's return. God is not judging us to condemn us. He is examining us to justify us if we are in Christ. This changes everything, including how we should live from now on. And the most incredible thing is that, over the centuries, this prophecy has been hidden in plain sight, ignored, misunderstood. Many don't even know what the 2300 afternoons and mornings are. But now, it is being revealed again. And if you've made it this far, it's not by chance. There is a calling in your life, a call to wake up, to study, to seek understanding. Because if the judgment has already begun, what comes next is even more powerful. Prophecy does not end with judgment. She points to what comes right after, the outcome of the great controversy. And yes, this has everything to do with our days. When we look at Daniel 8 and see the fulfillment of Bible prophecy over the centuries, there is no denying it. It speaks directly to our time. The time of the end has already begun, and we are the protagonists of this final phase of history. The same mechanisms that the little horn used to deceive and persecute today operate under new guises: spiritual misinformation, distorted doctrines, empty entertainment, and uncompromising religiosity. The truth continues to be thrown to the ground, but now with a diabolical subtlety. And here's the point: if we're not mindful, we can become part of the deception without realizing it. The eschatology revealed in Daniel 8 is not meant to fill us with fear, but with clarity. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. Knowing that we are in the middle of investigative judgment should directly impact our daily choices. What kind of content do we consume? How do we use our time? What truths have we ignored? Biblical revelation isn't just a theological curiosity, it's a practical guide to resisting modern deceptions. Today, the empire that most threatens our faith has no borders or visible armies. He enters our homes through screens, ideologies, habits. That is why this prophetic message is so urgent. God's people need to return to the scriptures hungry and thirsty, not to accumulate information, but to be transformed. The same God who revealed the details of the rise of the Greek Empire and the fall of the Medo-Persian Empire wants to prepare us to face the final events. What is coming will require solid faith, spiritual discernment, and a living fellowship with Christ. Christ's return will not be a random event. It will be the outcome of a timeline that is already underway. And Daniel 8 is a clear milestone in that journey. The good news: God has not left us without direction. He revealed everything in advance so that no one would be fooled. But He won't force anyone to see either. Therefore, this is the time to wake up, the time to decide which side we are on. Studying Bible prophecy is not a hobby, it is spiritual survival. When you understand Daniel 8, you no longer live as you once did. You pray differently, choose differently, He loves differently. Because you realize that you are inserted in something much bigger, something eternal, something that echoes from Daniel's time to his day, and that it's not over yet. And if you think all of this has already been profound, wait until what comes after. Because the next part of this prophetic journey reveals something even more powerful: the climax of the battle between truth and deception. The moment when the human kingdoms finally collide with the kingdom of God. And when that happens, there will be no more neutrality. There will be only two paths. Are you prepared? Or rather, do you want to be prepared? Because the next revelation that the Bible brings, it will show you that time is short, but grace is still available. After all that has been revealed here, the only sensible answer is no. Daniel 8 is not just a chapter of the Bible, it is a warning. A prophetic mirror that shows us that the world is revolving around something much bigger than wars, politics, or economics. The time of the end has already begun, and every decision you make now weighs on eternity. But now it's up to you. How did this message move you? What impacted you the most about this revelation? Do you believe that we are already living the investigative judgment? Write here in the comments. Your opinion can awaken someone else as well. And if that content spoke to you, share it. There are a lot of people out there who are lost, living as if everything is fine. And perhaps this prophecy is what they most need to hear right now. In the next video, we'll dive into another prophecy that complements Daniel 8 and reveals America's role in biblical eschatology. You'll understand why it's all happening so fast and what the role of nations is in the final fulfillment of Revelation. So if you want to continue receiving deep revelations like this, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because the journey is just beginning, and the next revelation will leave you speechless.